Welcome to the Tuesday Weekend, the podcast for people who will eat breakfast at any hour of the day. I'm your host Josh Hobson. Across from me, it will be your bartender for the morning, Nick Parkin. What's good, Nick?
Nothing in the morning usually. I could quote a very horrible movie and just say beer is for breakfast, young Flanagan. But yeah, that's mornings.
There you are. I had thought about actually talking about breakfast beer in particular at some point here, but I will also admit this week we are going to talk about breakfast, but here you have two not morning people talking about breakfast. And I mean, they say breakfast is among the most important meals of the morning, which I agree. But often for me, it is just coffee. But we're going to discuss what's for breakfast, what it's like working a breakfast shift, some common scenarios you might find yourself in where breakfast is probably the right solution. And then I've got a couple of stories of breakfasts on the road that I've found. Wonderful little places that I discover especially when I'm out on bike tours. Any meal of the day, I love to find the little independent mom and pop places, the little local joints that only exist there. And breakfast is such a good one to experience those for. But anyway, let's get started with a little background. It might seem silly to ask, who invented breakfast? Because sure, there is evidence of our prehistoric nomad ancestors making pancakes long before the dawn of farming. There are some who credit the agricultural production of oatmeal with making the human population boom sufficiently to necessitate our first cities. And we will get back to oatmeal. Then the ancient Egyptians would have their bread, onions, and beer to start the day. And you would too if you were in ancient Egypt. The Greeks and Romans enjoyed a good breakfast wine themselves. But by Europe in the 13th century, theologian Thomas Aquinas had labeled it a sin to eat before morning mass. After the mass, the faithful were allowed to finally break their fast, probably with beer like the Egyptians. Then moving forward to the 16th century in Tudor England, as more people left lives of working the land for long days working for an employer, eating a large breakfast became more important. Then the Industrial Revolution really solidified the concept of eating a big meal before a long day's work.
For every 12-year-old.
For every 12-year-old, exactly. Eat your Wheaties, kids. It's a long day in the mines. And that really has continued to be our custom to this day. But the Industrial Revolution would eventually give us cornflakes as well. So problem solved, right? Actually, one more fun bit of breakfast background knowledge is the notion that breakfast is the most important meal of the day was an ad campaign by General Mills in 1944. So good job to that ad writer, because 80 years later, it is still fundamentally drilled into American society. So you definitely earned your $1.50 that day. So, Nick, let's say there are 7 days in a week. How many of those days do you eat something before noon?
Maybe 2, maybe 3. Look, to be perfectly honest, my sleeping hours, I don't get off work till midnight normally. I'll eat when I get home. And before people say, like, you eat after midnight, it's like, A, I'm not a gremlin. B, do you eat after you get home from your job after 5 o'clock, or you stop eating at 5 p.m.? I mean, come on.
Correct.
Give me a break. So my sleeping rotation is I get up about 9, 10 in the morning. I'm just not hungry. My body's not trained to eat that early. Someone's like, oh, you have to fast for something. And I'm like, till when? And they're like, noon or so. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Every now and then I'm really hungry when I wake up, but most times my body's just not craving food till, 11 o'clock or so. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I still eat breakfast. I still do like what we consider a traditional breakfast, like, with eggs and bacon and toast and stuff, or I'll, have tuna fish sandwiches.
We discussed it a bit in the episode about mental health in the restaurant industry, just how, especially given the hours, how then messed up both our sleep and eating schedules get. Because again, like, I get home from work most nights at 10 or 10:30, and about 11:15 is when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And so that's when I'm eating, because I'm still going to be awake for a couple of hours at that point. Rarely am I asleep before midnight.
I'm the same way. It's like, I actually, people go out and I'm prepping all my meals for the week. Well, I'll prep all my dinners for the week. I mean, I'll make a bunch of, say, chicken cordon bleu, which is really not that hard. It's basically just rolled up chicken with meat and cheese. But they're fantastic when you get home at 2 in the morning and you want to eat at 3 in the morning. You don't have to cook anything. You literally just throw it in the microwave or even eat it cold. I eat when I get home because I'm hungry after work.
Yep, that's it.
And then when I have to do something early in the morning, like when I go say I have to go race a sailboat and it's dock time is 9, I mean, I'll be forcing a protein shake into my system because I know my body needs it, but it makes me nauseous to eat that early. I don't get seasick. I'm on the boat holding down breakfast because I'm not used to eating that early.
That's funny. In Park City, at one point, I did the Summit Challenge, which is a 100-mile bike ride around Summit County and lots of hills in there. And it started at 6, I think. So I had to be up at 4:45 to get up and get some oatmeal in my stomach and get to the start line. And about 10 miles into the ride, I threw up that oatmeal because my stomach is not used to eating that early. And really, I forced it down.
Yeah.
But I knew I needed some kind of energy in there. Thankfully, I also had a peanut butter bagel in my back pocket. But yeah, really, most of my chef jobs, if I go to work at noon or 2, which is kind of a common in time for a dinner cook or a dinner chef, I would frequently have coffee in the morning. And I know you don't personally drink coffee, but I certainly do.
Yes,
But
you do.
really, half the days I would make sure that I had my coffee, but eating something, did I eat something? Nah, it's all right. I'll grab something at work. And
Yeah.
I know that is not necessarily the healthiest, but it is also just kind of realistic.
Well, I mean, also in this industry, it's I've worked shifts where like, hey, eat something, you're working a double. Like they're telling me to go sit down and eat something, and then they're at the same time like, by the way, you have 15 minutes.
Right.
I mean, I worked at one restaurant where like, hey, go sit down in the office, and this is a place where the office was literally a chair and a desk, and that was it. And they're just like, go eat something, you're working a double. My eat something was like a chicken fried steak, red beans and rice, mashed potatoes, broccoli rice casserole. It was fantastic, but it was also at like 11 in the morning.
Sure.
Or they're just like, we know you don't eat breakfast. We need to remind you to eat. And I was like, yeah, like my end time's 2 usually. And I usually get in a meal before I go to work. And in between I get up, and I get up between 9 and 10 in the morning. I'm just not hungry. I'm not thinking about food.
No, me either. Well, and really it's funny because whether or not I eat breakfast is really rather dependent on my wife Dee's schedule, because on days where she is out the door by 7:30, I'm not getting up usually early enough to make breakfast for both of us. So then I basically won't eat. On days, especially her days off or days where she doesn't have to go in until later, that's when I'll make a smoothie for us at least, or some eggs, or something, usually something light, something smaller, though sometimes it is the big ass frittata because it's simple, it's good, it's a good use of leftovers too, that frittata.
Yeah, my mom always makes this breakfast whenever we have the family gather and get together for the holidays or whatever, and she makes it at least 2 or 3 times, and it's fantastic. And it's like just everything in eggs. I mean, there's ham in there, there's bacon in there, there's mushrooms, there's tomatoes, there's peppers, there's hot peppers, there's Parmesan cheese. I mean, and just that and toast. And I mean, I get up in the morning and I smell that still, and it's just like, now I'm hungry, and that's what I'll eat. But that's once in a while. I mean, every other time they're like, "Oh, you want breakfast?" I'm like, "No."
As a kid, what I recall is my mom's favorite breakfast was just buttered toast. But my dad occasionally would make crepes for everyone, and he does them quite well. And we would all just be sitting there waiting for the next one to be done, kind of patiently in line, because they take a while individually. Like the process of making a couple dozen crepes, if you only have one pan, is just going to take a bit. But they were so good. That was probably my favorite special breakfast growing up.
I love crepes and stuff. I hate French toast. I mean, my grandfather would make French toast for me and my brother once in a while. He had a farm. We'd be here in the morning. You need breakfast, and it's like, we already ate breakfast, whatever. But he would make French toast with so much egg in it. It was like basically eating a reverse sandwich where the
The egg's on the outside.
bread, dude. The
Just
egg,
cook-
there's like a quarter inch of egg around the outside, and it's just like, people, you
Yep.
want French toast? And I'm just like, no, never.
See,
I've had French toast since, and I'm like, that's actually very good. But the stuff I grew up on was not good at all, and it's just like, yeah.
Sure. A number of times before my grandmother passed, when I went to visit her, I would make her French toast for breakfast because that was her favorite. And it's simple if you do it correctly. And she was always just so impressed with how my French toast comes out. It's like there are 4 ingredients in this and bread. So yeah, I think I could manage to hit that pretty well and not burn it.
I mean, at the same time, back in my super athletic days, I mean, I would get up in the morning, I'd eat a huge breakfast, I'd go pick my buddy up, we'd be going to, like, say 3 days for football practice or even going to school, and then we would stop at 7-Eleven and get chili dogs at like 5 in the morning and just be like, oh yeah, I need the food, because back then I was eating over 10,000 calories a day and just
Sure.
constantly trying to keep my body going.
When I'm out on a long bike tour, like when you're riding 1,500 miles on a bike, the calories you burn, it's very difficult to replace that
Oh yeah.
volume of calories. So you're always hungry, which is great. And breakfast always tastes good. And I love eating breakfast out anyway. So yes, even though I might make myself some oatmeal in the tent, the first town I get to, I'm stopping for breakfast also.
Like, again, going back to the racing thing, and this is currently, it's when I do a long distance race, like a couple 100 miles and stuff, where sometimes there's not a lot of wind and on the water, so you're out there a little bit. I mean, I've gotten into a dock at, say, 5 in the morning, and we've waited for the breakfast place to open and then gone in, and I've had like 3 or 4 omelets plus everything I could find to eat plus more. I mean, just
Oh, sure.
I mean, everyone's watching me like, why are you eating so much? And it's like, I do a very physical job on the boat, and I haven't eaten anything on the boat too much. It's like they'll cook us dinner, whatever, and like I'll mow through that in like 30 seconds. Then we get to a dock, and it's like, you went to a buffet, and the buffet just lost money on you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm super hungry. And then I'll eat that and immediately just go to sleep. It's like, are we going to the hotel? They're like, why? And I'm like, 'cause I'm just going to lie down and sleep for like 6 hours. I mean, my body needs that food in the morning after something like that. But normally I just don't. I mean, I've tried. And like you said, if you don't eat breakfast in the morning early, like everyone is expecting you to, you're kind of choking it down. Like when friends invite you out to breakfast, it's like, what time? And they're like 8. And I'm like, I'm not even usually awake at 8 a.m. Okay, great. This will be a blast.
Well, and it's really disappointing when places stop their breakfast menu at 10:30, because it's not my fault that I am just now getting to you at 11, but
Yeah,
I
no.
still want that breakfast sandwich, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when McDonald's for a while, I think they went away from it again.
Mhm.
They used to do breakfast all day, and now they don't anymore. It was like, it was great to get a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit at noon. That's exactly what I wanted. I'm sorry I didn't want it at 7 in the morning, but
But I do now.
that's not my morning.
Exactly. All right, we're going to take our first break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about what it's like to work breakfast. But stay tuned, we will be right back.